Good morning. My name is Brandon. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm excited to speak to you all about using maps and apps to optimize your campsite, using a bunch of different tools to select where you're going, be able to look at different images and models to give you a better idea of what's happening in the real world, in the backcountry, so that when you arrive, you're not taken aback by any unforeseen surprises. So yeah, we're gonna sink into that. Let me see if my pointer, no. So, pardon me 1 second. Things aren't changing here. So yeah, again, my name is Brandon Boltz. I'm a trainer here in the Rockies, so based out of Canmore. I've been leading and working in the outdoors for about 14 years now. Whole list of certifications there that I've taken and been a part of, and I'm an instructor on some of them as well. With some folks I've had the ability to work with and offer these certifications. Again, this will not offer any certification. This is more just an informal kind of lunch and learn or way for us to connect with participants outside of a classroom, outside of going on a journey with you, and still be able to deliver some good information. So, oops, we're going the wrong way. So today we're going to cover a little bit of using maps. Uh, I think I've got about 5 different apps that I want to share with folks and how you can use those to plan your route. And get better imagery on things. I want to talk about understanding public land use zones and public land camping. That's a majority of what we'll be looking at today. I'll share a little bit about what makes an optimal campsite and what you can do to help set up your optimal campsite. At the end, I'm planning to leave time for questions, and throughout, I'll do my best to kind of look at all the screens that I have here in front of me and keep an eye on the chat that's going. There are a couple of spots that I leave it open for questions kind of part way through. So if possible, yeah, wait until that time. But if there's anything that I can reiterate or explain in a better way, let me know. Okay. The first app that I want to introduce us to is nativeland.ca. So maybe some of you are familiar with this already. I think it's a really great tool to get an idea of just how many different indigenous peoples have covered this planet and still cover this planet. And there's a lot of different ways that you can switches to change it from territories to languages or to treaties. So depending on your personal level of understanding of what you're searching for, you can fix that a little bit more in your favor. So what I had done for this was I wanted to search treaties. So on the map here of Turtle Island, you can see the variety of treaties, both in Canada and down in the US. And we'll zoom in a little bit on that to focus more. This is here in Alberta. And so in the pink area there, that's Treaty 7 land. That's where I'm calling in from today, and call home. Oh, sorry, somebody just let me know I froze. I don't know exactly where I froze. Nativeland.ca is the website here. And so using it to figure out treaties and indigenous peoples in the areas that you're traveling. So Treaty 7 here is highlighted in pink. You can see kind of off that left-hand side again, where you have the options down at the bottom. There's a link to click on Treaty 7, and you can learn more information by clicking on that. So it'll take you to the Treaty 7 website. It'll show you the Chiefs Association and just kind of focus in a little bit more on the precise area of Treaty 7. And you can see all the overlapping colors on that main image there. Those are different Indigenous peoples that have lived on this land, travel through this land, call this land home. And it's an important piece of your research, especially if you're going out on public land, to know if this is Indigenous land. And if so, I would definitely recommend reaching out to the band offices and gaining permission to travel on those lands. So here in Treaty 7, we recognize the Niitsitapi, or the Blackfoot Confederacy, of the Tsuut'ina, the Piikani, the Siksika, the Kainai. This is also home of the Ayarhe Nakota, comprised of the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Good Stony bands, and as well as the unceded lands of the Tanaha. Additionally, Métis Battle River Territory Region 3 is home here. So please feel free to drop in the chat where you're calling from. If you know the land that you're on, that's a great step. If you don't know the land you're on, well, here's the first tool and first thing that I can offer you to learn about it. So have a look at which treaty territory you're on. Today, maybe you're familiar with some of these, and I'm able to offer a few new tips. Maybe you've never worked with any of these apps or websites before, and we'll be starting from scratch. The images that I have are, for the most part, my own or screenshots. Screenshots are the only things that aren't my own. So it's a little bit of a visual storytelling as well. And you'll see some really great campsites and setups that I've done, as well as some earlier in my career setups that I felt was fun and important and kind of silly to share with you folks, to show my personal journey. This was one of my favorite sites. It's not a campsite per se on a map, so you'd have to learn how to read the map and get there, and then you're treated to beautiful views, a private little lake, and yeah, gorgeous, gorgeous campsite. So let's stick into that so you all can start finding campsites like this for yourself. So our map wall here at the Rockies office in Canmore looks a bunch like this. So we've got a few different areas that will travel typically, but looking at maps is so fun. I love it. It really gets my excitement going, thinking about new trips to go on, and showing people places that I've been as well. So with so many places to go, how do you choose? So a couple of considerations that I think of are, what time of the year are you going? What sort of conditions are you likely to encounter out there? Is it winter and therefore you've got sub-zero temperatures or avalanche conditions to worry about? So you need to really concern yourself about where you're traveling. What sort of transportation do you have access to, or do you need to go and return from your backpacking or camping trip? If you're just doing an out and back trip where you park your car in the parking lot at the trailhead, hike to a location and hike back, that's a lot easier than if you're doing kind of a circuit or something that you would have to align a shuttle or have two vehicles or bikes or just expect to walk quite a distance back to where you've parked. So thinking about transportation is something when I'm deciding where to go that I really consider. How much time do I have? Am I on a work trip that's kind of preset and I've got maybe 5, 10, 14, 21 days to work with? Or am I working with a long weekend? So kind of time that I have for that trip, rather. Additionally, I think about goals. You know, am I trying to go out and relax? And I'm quite happy finding a beautiful campsite and I'll stay there the whole time. or am I looking to do some other objectives and the campground or the campsite is part of that journey and I'm heading off into the hills. Other goals, yeah, or sorry, other things that I think of are, do I want a front country site where maybe I have access to flushing toilets and power outlets, or am I looking for more of a backcountry experience where I'm likely backpacking and hiking in, where I maybe or maybe not going to have access to even an outhouse, and certainly no connectivity for power outlets. So then, yeah, finally, do you want an established or a random campsite? So all of that I'm going to cover a little bit throughout this, and I'm excited to keep going with y'all. So we zoom in a little bit closer to our map. We've kind of defined a bit of an idea of what we have for transportation, where we want to go. I'm looking at the Kananaskis area of Alberta. Highway 40 is kind of the main road that drives right through the center, and there's a lot of different options off of Highway 40 for established kind of front country campsites, established wilderness campsites, as well as random camping out here. So zooming in even closer, some folks that I've worked with in this call or that will watch this video might recognize this. This is an area that we've used for the last couple years here in the Rockies and has been a wonderful location for a lot of our journeys. So just like some quick map reading 101 here, when you're looking at a map, the words and the grid is going to be oriented so that the top of the map is north, okay? When you're out in the real world, you'll need to use a compass and some other features to help you navigate which direction is north in the real world. I'd recommend using a 1 to 50,000 scale map. This is going to give you the best amount of detail without losing any of the accuracy of or ease rather of using UTMs and the grids. So kind of what I mean by that is with this 1 to 50,000 scale, 1 centimeter equals 500 meters, making that a 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer grid makes looking at the map and understanding distances and that scale a lot easier for me. Other key things to talk about with maps, the green areas kind of in those blue, those squares, those are going to be meadows or forests. The brown areas kind of in the image there on the bottom left, those are going to be open or rocky areas. You'll see blue features that are water. And then there's thin squiggly lines that kind of go throughout this entire image that actually create full circles. Those are contour lines, topography lines, some people might call them. And on this 1 to 50,000 scale map, those contour lines are going to be 25 meters apart, or they will indicate 25 meters of elevation change. So using the 1 to 50,000 scale with a 25-meter change also makes it a bit easier for us to calculate. Every map is going to have a legend, and so looking at the legend, you can also find all of this information, and that's a really important feature of any and all maps that you're using. Otherwise, you're just looking at a bunch of squiggly lines and colors, and it might not mean a whole lot. So reference the legend or the key, and you'll find a lot of this information there. And so one of the reasons that we've selected this area is that it's got a large chunk of public land, or PLUZ, or PLUZ, as some people will call them. So public land or crown land is for the people to use. If you're camping out there, you may still require a camping pass. So all of the public land use zones along the eastern side of the Canadian Rockies, you do require a camping pass for. I was looking into what BC and Ontario require. Most of them are also requiring some sort of camping pass, a conservation pass. Some sort of fee is still associated. So just know that you need to pay these fees. And if you don't and have proof of that and you're caught on these lands by the land manager, they can fine you. So it's really important that you cover all your bases and pay your fees. Um, Alberta has about 18 of these zones. They're linked together. A lot of them are right along the eastern side of the Rockies. So kind of thinking off of that. And with that, in these public land use zones, it's protected and there's still a large variety of user groups that are out there. So on public land use zones, you might see folks that are on off-highway vehicles or quads or side-by-sides, dirt bikes. I've seen a lot of horse users, either out there for multiple days or just for a day ride, people with chainsaws. So you're getting a different experience than what you would get if you were to go to Banff National Park or Algonquin and get a permitted site. You're not likely to see the off-highway vehicles or folks using chainsaws that aren't trail maintenance. So pros and cons to all of these spaces. Um, and I need to go back quickly to map reading. There was a note that I had that I wanted to share. How do you know what map to select is a good starting point. So if you think of planet Earth broken up into a bunch of different zones, 120 to be exact, there's 60 zones in the northern hemisphere and 60 zones in the southern hemisphere. These are called UTM zones or Universal Transverse Mercator zones. Um, as I said, the Northern Hemisphere is divided into kind of 60 slices, each about 6 degrees apart. So if you do some quick math there, 6 times 60 is 360 degrees or 360, which is a full circle. Canada covers 16 of those zones. So we are in zones 7, kind of starting from the west, all the way to 22, going to the eastern coast. And so here in Alberta, I'm in zone 11, which is really important to start out with when I'm going to buy a map or rummaging through the pile of maps that we might have here in an office or access to. So yeah, know what zone you're in and then start from there. Um, just wanted to cover that. Seeing a note here in the chat that in Ontario, camping on Crown land does not require a permit for Canadians. So yeah, there's some information you can find on the website. Thanks for that, Heidi. I have not done enough camping in Ontario yet. So great. So yeah, we'll be talking about public land use zones for the duration of this webinar. That's where we spend a lot of our time. Is a highlight. So since we don't have to book permits for the sites specifically that we're on, we're able to work with our program and our group more intentionally. So we might lay out a route plan and we're going to connect all these dots and do it in X amount of time, but we're also going to create backstops and exit strategies so that if we need to cut things short, we've got an easy way out. Because what can happen sometimes is on these trips, somebody gets a blister, somebody wakes up not feeling well. And if you have to cover 5, 10, 15 kilometers to get to your next campsite, because that's where you're permitted to stay, that can really be an additional challenge for you and your group. So on these public land use zone sites that we use, if somebody wakes up feeling not so well, we can hunker down in that spot for an additional day or two as needed because we are not infringing upon our permit in that location. So that's something to consider when you're planning. There we go. So as I mentioned, one of the features to be looking at are those brown squiggly lines or contour lines on the map. So just wanted to give a visual representation of kind of the 2D versus the 3D. So on the left-hand side, you'll see the contour lines. As you can see, all of those lines create a complete circle, although it might be more of an oval or, kind of an odd-looking circle. It's a closed loop nonetheless. So you'll see that same thing on any topographic map. And if you follow one of those contour lines at the same level, or you just follow that line until it closes its loop, you should be remaining at that same elevation that whole time. So looking at the features on the left, we can see that the contour lines really help outline the shape of the land that we're on. Now, an important thing to note is that if you're working with a map that has 25-meter increments for those contour lines, there might be smaller changes in the elevation between those lines that's not indicated on the map because it's not 25 meters. So your contour lines on a 1 to 50,000 map are showing you the 25-meter change in elevation, but there might be some little changes in between. I hope that makes sense. So looking at the top image there, we've kind of got a low point on the left. As you can see with the contour lines on the right part of the image, they are closer together. The closer your contour lines are together, the steeper that terrain is. If you move more to where that saddle feature is between those two dots, you can see that those contour lines are spaced out quite a bit. So that's indicating that there might be some flat, potentially campable terrain there. And so when I'm looking at a map and I'm deciding where I want to go and what might be viable for a campsite, I'm looking for those larger spaces in the contour lines. That's one of the first things that I'll be looking for anyways. And that'll let me know that I'm not going to be sleeping on a hillside and that I'll actually be camped out on some relatively flat ground, hopefully. So familiarize yourself with contour lines on the map and on other apps that you're using, because you'll see in Gaia later that I'll be talking a lot about the contour lines that are in each of those images. It's a key feature for map reading, and it's really fun. It kind of brings that 2D world into a 3D perspective once you know how to read them. So I definitely recommend getting out there with a topographic map, looking at the land that you're on, and trying to find the features. That's a really great way to test your navigation skills and identify what's happening on the 2D, comparing it to the 3D world. Practice, practice, practice. So thinking about random camping and going somewhere that there's not perhaps an established campsite, I want us to start thinking about what do established campsites offer, because we want to be able to set that similar comfort up when we're in the backcountry at a random campsite. So thinking about what's at an established campsite, access to water. Sometimes there's taps, sometimes there's a well, sometimes you have a beautiful shower house that you get to use. Established campsites also offer toilets or outhouses. We're in a confined impact zone where there's a lot of users coming through, and so they need to designate where the toilets or the outhouses are for folks. Hopefully there's flat tent sites. They do a lot of engineering to level the ground. They'll designate where your tent should be, and usually it's pretty flat. They offer some sort of cooking area. Hopefully, it's further away from your tent site than what this picnic table is in this image. I believe I walked away from my tent here to And then access to activities, right? Maybe your activity is spending time at the campground. Maybe camping is the activity or the accommodation that you've chosen before you do something else. Or maybe you're going backpacking and you want to check out some of the mountains or lakes or streams that are near your campground. And so I offer kind of those five things of what an established campsite offers because those are also things that I want to implement when I'm in the backcountry at a random campsite. Okay. So we're going to look at a couple of images of front country campgrounds that I pulled from Gaia. So I just used the app on my phone, took some screenshots to share with you all here of some very well established front country campgrounds. So all of these are right off of, either Highway 1 or a road that's adjacent to Highway 1. Um, they're very close to some sort of water source. And if you look at the contour lines on the image on the right, so where it says Sibbald Lake Campground, you'll see that kind of in the top right corner of the image, there's some contour lines that are close together. And then as you come into the campground where it says Sibbald Lake, um, there's a lot less of those contour lines. So we can assume with what we know about reading maps and using those contour lines that that campground has been strategically placed in a flat area. So they used the contour of the land to select where they went and put their front country campground, just the same as for backcountry campgrounds. So here's a few kind of like, I called it blended and backcountry. So the image on the left has Ribbon Falls Campground as well as Lillian Lake Backcountry Campground. So you'll see with Ribbon Falls, again, it's down in a valley. So you've got, it's not indicated by brown, but kind of that gray. That gray is telling you that it's rocky and open. The green down by the water there where it says Ribbon Falls, that's indicating we've got forests or meadows, some tree coverage. And again, you can see that those contour lines in the gray area are a lot closer together than when you come out into that valley where that pond is. Similarly, down at the Lillian Lake Backcountry Campground, you've got the trails, and they're also going to take the less steep terrain typically. And so Um, it's a smaller location, so you can expect that things are going to be a little bit tighter. You might have the hills right next to your campsite instead of like a wide open area, but maybe that's why you're going there, right? You want quick, easy, immediate access to some mountains. Um, Etherington Creek Campground is kind of a blended model. So from Calgary, anyways, it's still about a 2 hour drive. So you don't have cell reception there. You are pretty much backcountry at this point. However, they still have established flat tent sites. They have a well and they offer an outhouse for the facilities that are available there. And then moving over further to the right, that image, we've got large lakes that we have access to, kind of a mix of, both tent sites and maybe more where it says Kananaskis Country Campgrounds. That's where you might find some trailers and folks in their RVs taking advantage of some power outlets, but you're still in a location that doesn't have cell reception. You're an hour and a half away from the major cities and can still feel quite remote. So, again, kind of going back to so many places to go, how do you choose? Deciding based off of what you want to do, how much time you have, what you want your views to be, can all be considerations to take. And knowing what you're looking at on the maps can really help you make those decisions. So we spend a lot of time with our briefing days looking at maps. Even on my days off, I'm looking at maps and just kind of identifying where could we travel from, how long would it be to get there, and there should be a decent campsite. So how do we know if it's a decent campsite? Well, we want to make sure that we have some of the comforts of those established campsites. So access to water, that's something that I'm always looking for on a map. Wherever my trailhead is, kind of deciding maybe 5, 10, 15 kilometers in whichever direction I need to travel. I'm looking for a stream, a river, a pond, a lake, some source of water. If you've ever camped somewhere that you didn't have access to water, it's not the most fun at the end of your day to have to fill up a backpack with everybody's water bottles and Nalgene's and trek somewhere else to particular memory stands out that we ended up in what we referred to as dry camp, so no access to water. And yeah, we had to hike an additional hour to find a water source. So after a long day of backpacking, it's not really what you want to do. So trying to plan ahead of time where you're going and putting that near a water source is definitely something I would recommend. Um, Coming off of the trail at least 50 meters so that you're not obstructing the trail. People that are passing by aren't, seeing your whole camp setup. It's what's recommended by the land managers as well. Camping on durable surfaces is a leave no trace ethic. So, we shouldn't be going out into these wilderness areas and establishing our own campsites. So, like durable surfaces when I'm camping, if I've got, hard packed gravel and dirt, if I can put my tent on that, that's ideal. As you can see in this image, I'm very much so in the grass. So grass is a pliable kind of material. And once I leave that spot, it's going to be matted down from the night that I spent there, but it's going to spring back up. I didn't have to break any branches or remove any trees to make this site work for me. Um, Recommend thinking about your exposure. So when I'm looking at a site for the night, I'm looking up, I'm looking down, I'm looking all around, right? If it's winter time, do I have any avalanche terrain that I'm exposed to? From rockfall or dead and leaning trees. In the Rockies here, our prevailing winds come from the west. So, am I protected from any large gusts of wind by a rock wall, another mountain, or something else? So, thinking about my exposure um, comes to mind. Do I have tree coverage that's going to create a natural protection canopy from rain or snow as it falls? So, thinking about that. Um, Toilets are going to be a little bit more challenging to find or have when you are random camping. So recommendations are, make sure you've got the materials you need based off of the land manager's recommendations. So some places require you to pack in and pack out everything. So that's your toilet paper and your excrement is going in some sort of bag. You can do a couple of different options of either a cat hole or a latrine. So Both need to be at least 6 inches, 15 centimeters down into nutrient-rich soil. That nutrient-rich soil is going to be key for the decomposition of what you're leaving there, which should only be human waste. We should be packing out toilet paper or finding other methods to clean ourselves. And we should be making sure that we are not using the bathroom anywhere near where our water sources are. We don't want to pollute our drinking water or the drinking water for anybody else. So recommendations for that are minimum 20 meters away. The further, the better. And thinking of that, like a 60-meter by 60-meter site triangle is something that I would consider. And I would also incorporate those 60 meters into where my washroom facilities might be. So 60 meters might look like 70 big steps. And just thinking about finding a space to camp that's going to allow you to set your site up in this fashion. So I want to make sure that my tent is 70 big steps away from my camp kitchen. That's where all the food smells are going to be. That's going to be an animal attractant. I don't want those animals anywhere near where I'm sleeping. Similarly, I want my food storage to be about 70 big steps or 60 meters away from my camp kitchen. So we're separating those smells. Um, I'm also going to put in my food storage at night my smellies. So if I have deodorant and toothpaste and things that don't smell like human, maybe they smell fruity or minty or fragrant. I want to put all of those with my food storage. So anything that could be considered an animal attractant away from where I'm sleeping. Okay. So these are just some recommendations. And there's plenty of other tips and tricks out there of like how you should set up your campsite. But we're going to practice a little bit just looking at some screenshots from Gaia. So if you are in charge of selecting tonight's campsite, we've got the image on the left and the image on the right. So you're looking at the map. This is on your trail. It's the direction you want to go. Where are you selecting? We can see that both of them offer some significant spacing in the contour lines. So a little bit different. But if you selected the image on the left, that's where I would go as well. So what can help us decide that is looking at satellite imagery. So if you pull up on Gaia, if you're looking at the maps, there's different layers that you can add. When I'm route planning initially, I'll be looking at the Canada topographic map so that I can see the trails, the topography lines, and those different features in a greater detail. Left image, yeah, so where I put that waypoint is a little bit close to the trail. I would come off of that by that 50 meters for sure. And what I can show you in this other image is that with satellite, and I zoomed out a little bit, so these are the same locations, same waypoints. The one on the left has access to kind of a larger trail network immediately and some open areas that are fantastic tent sites. I've camped here, in fact. Whereas the image on the right, you got to do quite a bit of bushwhacking to get to those clearings. And the creek that's in the back there, you can see it better on this image, is actually quite a ways down that hill, and it was steep and really challenging to try and get water from. Additionally, the pond that we thought we had wasn't there. It doesn't really show up in the satellite imagery. Being there in real time, it was dried up. So that's something also to consider is when you're looking for water sources, is it something that has historical flow and is consistently there? Or is it something like a pond that doesn't have flow in and out and it might dry up? I've got one colleague that regularly calls me and asks, "Hey, do you know what the water levels are like in this part at this time of year?" And that's really hard to answer. I don't keep good track of all the rainfall all the time in all the places, but tracking your rainfall can be a beneficial tool in selecting sites based off of water. If you know it's been a really rainy spring, then that pond might be more likely to be full and a viable source of water. But yeah, the image on the left, that's where I want to go camping. It's close to the water. I can kind of be on and off the trail cook site and my food storage. Okay, so we're going to level it up one more time. I've got, this is essentially three images of the same location. So this is also the location that we were using on the paper maps. So this is that public land use zone. Um, we're starting at Cataract Creek and we're exploring the Strawberry Hills, as they're called. So this is a direct screenshot from Gaia off of my phone. It is available on your computer as well. I like using it on my phone because I can download the maps, I can take it with me, it fits in my pocket, and I can pretty easily pull this up to locate myself or use it as the tool that it is. So I prefer to use it on my phone personally. And so just a couple of things to talk about with these three screenshots. All of those red dots, those are waypoints. And so the way that you would create a waypoint is with the map pulled up, you can tap on the location that you want that waypoint to be, and then it gives you the option to save. You can rename it whatever you want. You can put a few different features in there. And then when you save it, it shows up on the map. So what I've laid out here for us is a variety of waypoints, and we want to select a campsite based off of our route and where we're going. So we're going to look at the image on the left because that lays out the route plan. You can see from one black arrow to the next is the route that we're setting out on. You've got options here. You can go left or right in this fork. However, for our route, you can see that the next trail we're going down is kind of in the bottom of that left-hand image. And then I couldn't fit everything into one image. So jump over to the right-hand image where you see that star spinning around. That's where we're going to end up. So starting right off the highway, and then we'll walk to campsite number one, hike over to campsite two. Where are we going to camp for campsite three? So in the middle there, I've also offered kind of the satellite imagery, and then I'm going to jump one slide over because it zooms in much better. So what I want you to think about is you can just see campsite two in the top left-hand corner there. Which campsite, A, B, or C, might you select? Feel free to drop it in the comments, the chat. Is it on the route that you want to go? Is it near water? What are the contour lines looking like? And I selected campsite A. It felt like the easiest path from campsite two to get to a viable campsite. What I really liked about it is that I wouldn't have to do a creek crossing necessarily at the end of the day. And it's obviously near a creek compared to campsite B, which doesn't look like it has any sort of water features nearby. You'd have to really go for a hike to get down to that creek and back, and I don't want to do that. Campsite C is near water. It looks like it has more water even than campsite A. It's slightly off route, and I'd have to cross the creek at campsite A anyways, but I might consider that as a backup option, right? If I get to campsite A and it's occupied or it's not as good as I thought it was, maybe thinking about campsite C as an option is what I would go for. I'd hoped that I would hear some voices and be able to offer some answers and some back and forth here with questions. So I'll pause for a moment, and if folks have questions, feel free to drop them in the comments there. Um, this is another campsite. I think I'm on an island here, somewhere on the Churchill River system. It's an 18-day canoe trip, all random camping. So we're looking at the maps. We're always near water. And we're looking for the islands that are the flattest, looking at those contour lines and then paddling it up to it to see if it's any good. All right. Give it another minute for those questions. And I'll move on. Okay, so another cool feature that Gaia offers is you can tap and hold the screen, and a little blue dot's going to pop up. And then you can connect those blue dots along the trail. And if there is a trail, Gaia's really good at contouring to the trail quite nicely to give you some precise readings of the land that you're traveling on. So the image on the left is starting at that campsite 2, is about 5.1 kilometers with 191 meters elevation gain and 143 meters elevation loss. So just by tapping and holding on the screen, this little blue dot will pop up. And then if I tap along the trail that I want to go down and continuously tap, as you can see on the right-hand side, it's going to keep linking that trail together. So I really like this as a tool for figuring out and understanding distances. You can do the same thing with a piece of string on your paper map and then hold that up to the grid or the scale that's at the bottom. But this is a really nice thing for quick, easy access and understanding of the terrain that you're going on. So the image on the left shows the first 5 kilometers from campsite 2 to campsite A as it is. And then there's an additional 6.4 kilometers to what I was calling campsite 4. So what I've done here is kind of created a few options because maybe that round trip of 11.5 kilometers with 380 meters of elevation gain could be done in a day. But if not, I know that I've got a potential campsite about halfway through my day. And maybe I stop there for lunch and gives me a good opportunity to check it out. And if we decide to stay there that night, fantastic, we're already there. And if I don't stay there that night, then I've scouted it for a future backpacking trip. So yeah, holding, tapping, and tracing the trail that you'd like can give you this information, and you can save it or just use it as a tool to understand kind of the distances of things and the elevation gain. It also gives you the option to not go on trail. So the image on the left is something that I've done with a group that wanted to experience off-trail travel. So from our campsite 2, we did not follow the trail and we bushwhacked up a hill, down a hill, and that gave me a good indication of kind of what we were about to encounter in this bushwhack. And then similarly, I was able to use the information on the right to compare the distances as well as the elevation gain. So it's not much more if you were to go around that hill as far as distance goes, but it's quite a bit more elevation gain. So using this to decide with your group or for yourself if you want to bushwhack and go off trail and what that might look like, or sticking to the trail and being able to compare those facts. What I like at that blue triangle, if I do the same exact thing from where I'm standing, so with my app out, holding the screen until that blue dot comes up, and then tracing the track or touching the trail to my next destination, it'll tell me exactly how far away I am from my next point, right? So the little gray square in the screen there, when I was creating this, is telling me that it is 85.42 kilometers away from where I currently am in Canmore, but this is in Kananaskis. So if you can imagine, when I do the same thing and I'm at that location, it'll tell me that I'm precisely 4.2 kilometers away. Okay. So yeah, I really like this feature on Gaia. You're able to save it, you're able to delete it, you're able to really play around with things and get a good idea of the land. Once you have that information of distances, it's important to know kind of what you are able to cover with your group. Yeah, cool. So Max is asking the question we're about to jump into. So estimating your travel time is an important way to create your route. You might find on your map a beautiful location that's right by water, you know is going to have great views, and is perhaps a little bit too far for your group with 50-pound backpacks to travel. So a way that you can figure out roughly your travel time is by this. So I account for 15 to 20 minutes per kilometer on flat, open trail, right? I'm going to add more time if I'm bushwhacking or if I know where I'm going isn't a very established trail. But for this, 15 to 20 minutes per kilometer on flat trail. Then I want to add 15 minutes per 100 meters of elevation. So for the example, if I'm traveling 3.5 kilometers with an overall elevation gain of 300 meters, it's going to be about 70 minutes just for that 3.5 kilometers. And then I'm going to consider about 45 minutes for that 300 meters of elevation gain, which comes out to be, it's an hour and 55 minutes, about 2 hours. So this is just like a rough guideline. I work with this 15 to 20 minutes when I first meet a group of people or if I haven't met them at all, right? So that I've given myself some time to work with. One of my other tips there is adjust. You can adjust those travel times to a more accurate timing. So I know I do about 12 12-minute kilometers with my dog on a dog walk, and I can use that as an indicator. Additionally, possible sites so that you have backups or something beyond. So if 11.5 kilometers is good for your group, you know that next campsite's just around the corner, or you've got kind of a halfway point at 5 kilometers. Not traveling in the heat of the day is definitely something I'd recommend, especially if you're at higher elevations. And then pacing is something to really work on as leaders. So that you don't overtire yourself or working with. So I like to consider an all-day pace. Something that I'm able to walk and talk normally. If I'm walking up a hill, I'm going to adjust my pace so that I can still have a conversation while I'm walking up that hill. And that when we get to the top, we don't need to take a break so people can catch their breath. So when you're working on all of that, think about adjusting your travel times, both like the time you're giving yourself and the time of day that you want to travel. Yeah, good question about descending. So I don't take off that much time when I'm descending a hill. So if I add 15 minutes going up that hill, I might say it's 10 minutes per 100 meters going down the hill. There's still a lot with like trekking poles and balance and um, a lot of injuries happen on the return trip. So would definitely consider adding those numbers and factors into your travel times. All right. So, a couple other things here. So that was all Gaia. Gaia is a great free app. There's another webinar that one of my colleagues, Bea, has done about kind of the specifics of using that app. I wanted to give you a few different tools, so forgive me for not going into so many specifics on how to use it, but Bea has done a great one here on our YouTube channel. So another app that I wanted to share with you all is Copernicus browser. So this one's really cool. It's like Google Earth on steroids, and you can do a lot of the same things if you just like zooming into things and getting that satellite view. But one of my favorite things about this website is you can select the time of year, the day quite specifically, and your location of what you want to view. Um, so what I can do is on the left-hand side, I can select the date. Um, and then once I select the date, it gives me the opportunity to select cloud coverage. So if you can see, I've got on November 6th, 2024, I was able to find an image with 8% cloud coverage of, again, this is the same location we've been looking at in the paper map, in Gaia, and now here on Copernicus. Um, so what I can see is real time, more or less, conditions of where I want to go. So I can see as of November 6th, there wasn't a whole lot of snow out of the mountains. We can still see lots of green in the trees there. And then if I want to get a better idea of conditions, I know that it snowed right around um, the 20th of November. So I can select November 20th and get a better idea of what that area looks like with some snow coverage. Additionally, if I want some historical information, so thinking about my colleague that sometimes calls about water and what's happening in August in places, what we can do here is July is the month that I've selected. And I know July was particularly snowy in this region. And so I can go back and I can look and I can see um, different levels of cloud coverage. So I want as little cloud coverage as possible. So I've got the clearest image. I've selected the Hill of the Flowers, which maybe you noticed in a couple of the other maps. So this was an objective that we had on one of our hiking days. And this gives me the exact location of that, which is in the top left of the satellite image there. And then it gives me a couple of different options. So I could have looked at the 19th and the 24th of July as well to see what sort of conditions I might be encountering that time of year, right? You're expecting to go on a nice summer backpacking trip. It's mid-July, but you forgot you're in the Canadian Rockies, and sometimes summer doesn't hit until the end of July, and to know how much snow might be on the ground at your hopeful campsites can be quite useful. So Copernicus browser, really fun tool to use. I'd recommend, just playing around with it. Very basic offerings of what I'm telling you here, but you can play with the cloud coverage. You can go years in the past of what the images looked like. So yeah, some cool stuff to play with there. Um, Before you go on these trips, it's important to check all of your gear. This image is hilarious to me. This was probably closer to 20 years ago. Three of us slept in this tent. Somebody said, I've got a tent, let's go. we didn't check the tent before we went, and I think we're missing 2 out of the 5 poles here. So it's really important to check your gear before you go. Check your systems as well. Make sure that, your sleeping systems, your tent systems, your food and kitchen systems are all there. Check your food, check yourself. Make sure you've got good emergent contacts in place. Check all of your devices. Make sure if you need permits for where you're going, that you have them. Good idea to check out trail reports so they can let you know if there's been wildlife out there sighted recently, better indication of what conditions are. And then if there's any closures, you would hate to drive 2, 3 hours to a trail that's closed and not have a backup plan, right? And then checking weather as well. So um, weather brings us into another app that I like to use. It's called Windy, and it's very user friendly, I find. And it gives a great reading of your local weather, the global weather, and it's got a lot of different features. So consider this a step up of maybe what you're currently doing for reading weather. I use Government Canada's weather app um, for kind of an initial, just quick scan of the weather, and then I come to Windy to get a better reading and gauge of what's happening. And then with that, you can again search the location that you want to go. So I typed in the search bar on the top left, Hill of the Flowers, and then up pulls kind of what do we have here? A 5-day forecast. Obviously, the further out of the forecast you go, the least accurate it is. But this is a weather reading specifically for Hill of the Flowers. Typically, if you're just using the weather app on your phone, it's pulling from your local airport, the nearest airport, and then it's using algorithms to guess what the weather might be like where you are. So, wouldn't recommend using it unless you are very close to a city. That weather app, Windy, is going to give you precise weather readings, and it's got a really cool feature that you can compare multiple models. So there's even like a fifth model that's out of this shot here. And so this will give you a better reading and understanding of a variety of models and what is potentially coming your way. Additionally, it's got a lot of different features and filters. So the one that I have, this is our same location, Hill of the Flowers. And the day that I checked this, it let me know that there's 25.6 centimeters of snow out there. You can see all the other colorful squares that I have on the right. Those also are filters that you can put on to show a variety of things. New snow is something that I like. If you're a skier or snowboarder, knowing what the snow conditions are is great. There's also one that can show you the the precipitation type as well as like the current moisture in the area. So, are you looking at soggy valley bottoms to camp in, or is it dry and crispy? So again, something really great to play around with. And then as fires become more and more of our reality, firesmoke.ca is a website that I would recommend. This will give you a good idea of where fires are and the direction that the smoke is blowing. I often think about the folks that come out to Banff and these national parks with our beautiful mountains in the summer when we have forest fires and the views aren't there. Never mind the fact that you're trying to recreate in thick smoke. So using this can be a good tool to figure out if you're going to have views, are you anywhere near a fire, and deciding maybe not to go to a location based on your proximity to that fire. Each province also has some similar tools, but this one covers the entire country. And has a cool map that you can play around with. And thankfully, we don't have smoke or fires here in this section of the Rockies. So there's nothing to show. But if it did, it would show you, a scale of how smoky it is, what's happening, and again, where those fires are. So this has become something that I've begun using more and more as fires become more of our reality, and working with people in the outdoors who have, maybe asthma. This is something that I want to consider. So when I'm planning my trip, is there a forecast where a lot of smoke is going to be coming into the valley that I'm in? And if so, should I think of somewhere else to go? Or is that just a day or couple days where we're minimizing the activity that we're doing? So, um, I realize I've gone over the hour that I promised. I'm so, so sorry. So I am wrapping up here. Again, the apps that I was offering some learnings on today, Native Digital Land or Native Land is the website. Windy.com for weather, Copernicus browser for some great satellite imagery, Gaia GPS. There's so many other things that I wasn't able to show you about Gaia, but download it. There's free versions, there's paid versions. The free version offers so, so much. Start with that. And then firesmoke.ca is another one that I'd recommend just for keeping an eye on the fires in your area. So, thank you all so much for joining me today. I wish I could have seen more of your faces. And yeah, if you'd like to learn more about the Training Academy, grab this little QR code, or that's our website, outwardbound.ca/training academy. If you'd like more information directly from me, my email is my name, Brandon_Boltz at outwardbound.ca. I'd love to hear from you folks and answer any questions that I failed to so far through this. But yeah, thanks so much for your time. Hopefully it was enjoyable. And if there's any questions, feel free to drop it in the chat. I'll hang out for another couple minutes. But otherwise, thanks so much, folks. I had fun making this and doing this. So hope you enjoyed it. Cheers. Have a great day. Thank you, folks. Couple in the chat. Appreciate it. Alrighty. Again, Brandon_Boltz at outwardbound.ca. Question that I have here, just wondering if there's any one common mistake folks make when selecting a site on the map versus reality. Yeah, so great question. Going back to that image that I showed of the two campsites, one right by the creek and one by the possible pond. That was a personal mistake that I made. I thought that pond and the terrain around it would be better to camp on, so I had selected that as a location. And didn't know until I got there. So it was a little off course to get there, and then we still had to keep going. So yeah, I'd say one of the common mistakes is just identifying a place that is good when you've got a seasonal pond or a water source that isn't available, or forgetting to account that, if your contour lines are spaced out 25 meters, that there might be that micro terrain in between that creates a less flat site. That's what I would think of. Hope that helps. Thanks again, folks.